What is up there, beautiful people, and welcome to another edition of Just Trending News. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this channel and also hit that notification bell so you're always notified when I upload new videos. So today we're speaking everything that's related to Zimbabweans. We're going to be speaking about the ZEP permit. We're going to be speaking about Minister Aaron Motsoaledi and also just, foreign immigrants that are currently here in South Africa in general, legal or not, okay? So for those of you who don't already know or have not seen, basically a high court in Pretoria has ruled against Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. Okay, and this is what it says. It says the Pretoria High Court has declared unlawful, unconstitutional, and invalid the decision by Motsoaledi to terminate ZEPs. Okay, so that's what the news article read. For those of you who do not know what ZEPs are, don't worry, I've got you. So basically, ZEPs were basically established, in 2009 as a humanitarian gesture to allow nearly 200,000 Zimbabweans who fled their country's political and economic turmoil to stay and work in South Africa. Okay, so basically, in a nutshell, a ZEP permit was a special work permit that was granted to Zimbabweans back in 2009 because during that time, and I believe currently as well, basically the Zimbabwean, climate in the country in terms of politics and economics was not doing that well. So they were given sort of like a grace period in South Africa. These permits were initially meant to last 12 months. I do believe I speak under correction. So to work and to stay in South Africa, obviously, as they were fleeing from their country, right? So I believe it was sometime late last year or early this year, basically Minister Aaron Motsoaledi had stated that he was going to work on actively deporting, and I say this with a grain of salt, but actively deporting foreigners, specifically Zimbabweans who are currently documented in South Africa, I might add, but who do not have valid ZEP permits in South Africa. Okay, so basically he put in an application at court, and that application has now been dismissed by the court. So basically, in a nutshell, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, cannot legally deport Zimbabweans because they do not have a valid ZEP permit. So what I assume is going to happen is that they're going to be given yet another grace period, because they've been given grace periods in the past to reapply for their ZEP permit so they can continue working and staying in South Africa. So I also thought that it was very important to note that the people who are in possession, or the Zimbabweans rather, who are in possession of ZEP permits in South Africa are legal. So these are legal and documented Zimbabweans who are currently staying in South Africa. Okay, so I had seen on Twitter specifically that there were a lot of people who had this confused and were thinking that the Zimbabweans that people were referring to were the undocumented ones. People who are, or Zimbabweans who are in possession of ZEP permits in South Africa are 100% legal, and they are able to be here. Okay, so basically, obviously, once your permit does expire, then you're no longer supposed to be in South Africa, and that's where deportation starts, or that's where deportation comes in, right? Because if you don't have the papers, the legal framework, the legal permission, to live in a country, then of course you're supposed to be deported, because I mean, come on, who do you think you are? Everyone that's here has some sort of a right to be here, right? And everyone that's here is supposed to be documented, but clearly, as we all know, most of foreign immigrants that are living in South Africa are currently undocumented and therefore illegal. Okay, so before I get into my thoughts on all of this, I just want to start out by giving a disclaimer, and I'm giving this disclaimer because previously in the past, and even actually currently, most of the time when South Africans especially express their viewpoints on immigration into South Africa, foreign nationals that are in South Africa, these ZEP permits, basically anything that's pertaining to the level or the presence of foreign nationals in South Africa, whenever we express whatever opinion that we might have, we're always dubbed as being xenophobic. Now granted, I do get that there are people who are xenophobic in nature whenever they do speak about certain things, especially things pertaining to foreign nationals, obviously, as that's what this topic of a video is about, but I do want to bring out a disclaimer that I'm going to try to be as blunt as I can, or as blunt as possible when it comes to certain things. I'm going to give my opinion as a South African that's living in South Africa about, how I feel about foreign nationals living in South Africa, legal or not. And I don't want my words to be misconstrued. I don't want people to have the wrong perception about what I'm going to say. And I don't want people to, accuse me of being xenophobic, because that's not the case. I'm just passing my opinion, okay? I do believe that, I do not agree specifically with the decision that was made by the court, right, by the Pretoria High Court. I don't agree with them deciding that they're going to throw Aaron Motsoaledi's, sort of appeal out to deport, Zimbabweans who are no longer in possession of these permits, purely because if you no longer have valid papers to reside in a country, then you're not supposed to be in that country. Let's actually take the undocumented and illegal, foreign nationals out of the equation for 1 second and focus specifically on these people. If you do not have the proper papers, if your papers have expired, you do not have a right to be in that country. So I don't understand how the Pretoria High Court can say that it is unlawful and unconstitutional and therefore also invalid to try to terminate the ZEP permits. So I have been following the issue or the story with the ZEP permits for a long time. I have noted in the past that there has been numerous grace periods, if I can put it that way, in relation to the ZEP permits, right? This is not the first time that we're speaking about the ZEP permits. Almost every single year without fail, this issue of the ZEP permits come in the first place. What we do have to realize and also understand is that aside from the fact that when you're no longer in possession of a valid permit to work in a country, and this is how it works all over the world, right, that you're supposed to leave that country. When taking that aside, another point that I want to bring out to you was that these permits were supposed to be temporary. It was never supposed to be an issue of, it was never supposed to be something of, these are permanent permits that are given to you to live in South Africa. If I am remembering my facts correctly, these permits were supposed to be given to them for a 12-month period back in 2009. If you do the math from 2009 to currently where we are in 2023, how many 12-month periods have since gone past? Okay, so these permits were never supposed to be a permanent, and I say privilege, because it was a humanitarian gesture. It's something that we have decided to give to you, not because we have to, but because we wanted to give to you. We thought we should help, right? So it's not something that was necessarily supposed to be permanent. So with the High Court declaring this as unconstitutional, invalid, and unlawful, I do sort of try to or wonder or question sometimes the extent to which some of our, I'll say call them elites, all of these people in higher positions, the higher ups, basically the people that don't share the same plight or fight as most of us people do, us ordinary people do. I do wonder and I do sort of think about their reasoning capacities and capabilities, right? Because for you to constantly allow such a large influx of people who are documented, over 200,000 Zimbabweans are documented at the moment, right? For you to continue to allow such a huge presence of foreign nationals in South Africa, knowing that as South Africa, we are dealing with large cases of unemployment. Our unemployment rate, I think, sits at 51%. I'm not too sure if it's 51%. I do speak under correction. You do know that we do not have basically electricity, so a larger presence of people in the country does put an added pressure on Eskom's capacity to basically supply electricity, corruption aside, to supply electricity to South Africans and all of these people that are also now in South Africa as well. Healthcare, you do know that public healthcare is in shambles, infrastructure is in shambles. We basically are overstretched right now as South Africa and as South Africans in terms of not being able to fully make use of the very scarce resources that our country does have. So for the High Court to then declare this as being unlawful, therefore allowing these foreign immigrants who are documented, I will say, to live in South Africa, that to me is just basically absurd. And it just shows that a lot of these politicians really do not have our best interests at heart, I believe, because they know that they're not competing or scrambling for the same types of jobs, resources, healthcare. They do know that when they allow a large presence of foreign nationals to live in South Africa, that they are not going to be the ones who are going to be affected the most. We are going to be affected the most. And that's why a lot of South Africans are angry and up in arms on Twitter, because you cannot tell me that you continue to see how we're currently being and have been disadvantaged by such a large presence of both documented and undocumented foreigners, but you refuse to do something about it in the case where you can. In this case, where you have these people's details, you have their names, you know exactly who they are. If they're not supposed to be in South Africa, there should be legal and humane deportation procedures that should be done. But anyways, I don't want to ramble too much. This video is 10 minutes long. I don't know how it got to this. Tell me what you think about this in the comment section, and I'll see you in my next upload.